What if I told you there are 5 brutal truths most Solana maxis and influencers aren't willing to say out loud? And what if these brutal truths will help determine if Solana is destined for $500 or $50 next? I know it can feel impossible to see through the noise, the bot posts, and the biased content, which is why we spent hours and hours digging into Solana to find these truths and to uncover some unexpected catalysts that could drive Solana forward. By the end of the video, you'll be able to answer, is Solana really dying, or is this the ultimate buying opportunity before the next leg up? And trust me, these truths will get more intense as we go. Okay, so first of all, you may have heard that Solana has the best developer activity or the greatest adoption, but here's the reality nobody wants to admit. According to data from The Block, the Solana blockchain has accounted for well over 60% of all new tokens launched in the last year. The catch here is that the meme coins drove most of the revenue. Meme coin dApps on Solana brought in $509 million in 2024, which was 83% of all dApp revenue on Solana. And what's even worse is that while over 4 million tokens were launched on Solana, over 80% of those tokens ended up as rug pulls. So sure, Solana has some extremely bullish applications, which we'll talk about later, of course, but over 83% of the chain's revenue is from meme coins, and 80% of those are scams. Does it really justify Sol's massive market cap? And if Solana's explosive growth was built on a house of cards, what's actually happening beneath the surface? Well, for the second brutal truth, the on-chain data tells a completely different story than what you're hearing from influencers on X. You see, at its peak in November 2024, Solana had about 17 million active addresses, but that number has now fallen to well under 8 million. And data from Glassnodes and DeFi Llama show a clear decline in both active addresses and DEX trading volume on Solana, which is really highlighting this decline in activity. But here's where things get interesting, because while Solana's trading volume has plummeted to 6-month lows, Ethereum's DEX ecosystem has held strong. So was Solana's on-chain activity always an unsustainable anomaly? I mean, sure, lower network activity can be normal during big corrections, but what isn't normal is the third truth Solana needs to face, which is its historically low sentiment. You see, when price drops, sentiment usually follows pretty proportionally, but right now there's a big problem. Analyst Don Alt notes that Solana's reputation has shifted from being one of the most beloved blockchains in the space to one of the most hated. But why? Well, by early 2025, as I'm sure you know, meme coin mania hit its ultimate crescendo as the trenches went from the degen's house to the White House when President Trump launched his own coin. And of course, this spiraled into disasters as Melania Trump, Dave Portnoy, the Central African Republic, DaBaby, and most notably, of course, Javier Milei got in on the action. Libra really was that final straw for retail investors, as even Edward Snowden publicly criticized the chain. And now, Solana's Fear and Greed Index is near all-time lows. This signals one of two things. Either the bottom is in, or there are fundamental problems the market still needs to fully price in. So, which is it? Well, I'm confident these next two truths will make that answer clear. So the first of these, while Solana has improved in terms of stability, recently there's been significant criticism of its high transaction failure rate. Last year in April, Dune Analytics showed that over 75% of all transactions on the Solana network were failing, especially during meme coin mania. But some say the data was being widely misrepresented. Helios's CEO, Mert Mumtaz, defended Solana, saying many of those failed transactions were just bot spam. And CCN's analysis of swap volume on Solana actually agrees with that, showing about 79% of Solana's volume was generated by bots in late 2024. But stop and think about that. Nearly 80% of all the active wallets on the network that crypto Twitter celebrates aren't even real people? So considering that, should all of Solana's transactions be seen as equally valuable to other layer ones? That's a great question, and it's one that the market still needs to work through. But before we reveal if there's any light at the end of the tunnel for Solana, there's one more brutal truth that Solana maxis must face. You see, there is one chart playing out eerily similar to previous cycles. As Ben Cohen and many other analysts have pointed out, the SOL Bitcoin ratio looks shockingly similar to the ETH Bitcoin ratio last cycle. And if the trend holds, Solana would be expected to significantly underperform relative to Bitcoin in the coming months. And here's a scary thought. If ETH, an asset with significantly deeper liquidity, institutional backing, more history, and broader adoption, failed to reclaim its Bitcoin ratio in the long run, what are the odds Solana does any better? So at this point, you may be thinking, okay, so you're telling me meme coins have collapsed, network activity is down, sentiment is toxic, it's full of bots, and charts look weak. But you said that buying Solana here could be a huge opportunity. That's right. Because despite everything we've just covered, there are 3 massive catalysts that no one is talking about. So before we get to those big catalysts, it's critical to understand what fundamentally makes Solana bullish. Solana's technology has made it a real Ethereum competitor. And when directly comparing Solana to Ethereum, including all of its layer 2s for scaling, Solana still blows them out of the water in transactions per second. Solana's speed, its predictably low fees, and scalability make it very attractive to developers, users, and financial institutions. And these fundamental advantages are what drive narrative and have caused these 3 catalysts to emerge. So let's start simple with the first catalyst. If you somehow haven't heard, Trump officially established the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve, and importantly, revealed the plans for a digital asset stockpile. And Trump had even hinted beforehand at the idea of including ETH, XRP, ADA, and Solana into a crypto strategic reserve. But whether or not that ever actually happens, just getting named alongside Bitcoin and Ethereum by the president significantly reinforces Solana's credibility in the space. So while this could change everything in the long term, you may be wondering, well, what could drive Solana forward in the short term? Great question, because there's another huge potential catalyst that could arrive within weeks, not years. So while everyone's been focused on the political developments and on the Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs, Solana has been making moves that retail investors have totally missed. The SEC is now weighing multiple SOL ETF applications. Grayscale's Solana trust filing was accepted in February, and the earliest approval date is in early April, although it likely would take longer. Polymarket currently predicts an 87% chance of its ETF approval by the end of the year. So yeah, some of this optimism may be priced in, but the fundamental value of something like this cannot be understated. Either way, both of these catalysts are bullish, but at its core, what would truly drive speculation in the Solana ecosystem right now, especially if meme coins are taking a back seat? Well, this is where I get by far the most excited about what Solana can be. Because while the meme coin bubble was bursting, 3 critical use cases emerged. And the first one is already disrupting a multi-trillion-dollar market. The first is a critical development in an emerging narrative, real-world payments, or PayFi. Huma Finance is the first payment financing PayFi network, and they announced the launch of its protocol on Solana in November 2024. PayFi as a narrative can solve huge problems in global finance and trade. Imagine a company has delivered goods worth $100,000, but the buyer won't be able to pay for another 30 days. Huma Finance and PayFi in general will fix these types of problems and many others as well. But just as important, the second critical narrative Solana is capturing is DePIN, or Decentralized Physical Infrastructure Networks. DePIN was one of CoinGecko's top 10 crypto narratives in 2024, and Solana has managed to attract and retain some of the biggest projects in the space, including Helium and Render Network, both of which chose to migrate to Solana because of its tech. And Masari's research highlights how Solana is aggressively capturing market share in DePIN and even pulling projects away from other layer 1s. All right, so now the third and possibly most bullish of these new narratives is AI agents. The biggest AI agents protocol, Virtuals Protocol, just went live on Solana, and Eliza OS, formerly AI16Z, Arc, and many other AI agent projects are still in the first inning of development. And the Solana Foundation is fully embracing and funding this narrative. And in general, the AI narrative as a whole will be a game of developer power. And Solana continues to lead the way in developer adoption and mindshare in the last year. Unlike meme coins, these three narratives create actual utility, use cases that could drive sustainable growth with real user adoption in the ecosystem. Finally, what does this all mean for Solana? At the end of the day, Solana's fate hinges on whether it can transform from a meme coin casino into an ecosystem that solves real problems. I think the core value proposition is right. Users want fast and simple transactions, and it's attracting developers and leading in many of the narratives that matter the most, despite all of its current problems. And let's be honest, it survived some huge problems before, thanks Sam. So the question is, can this transformation happen fast, or has too much brand damage been done for it to recover? Let me know your thoughts down below. And also, it's critical to understand all the leading blockchains. And recently, I made a video about Ethereum's short to midterm potential. So if you want to better understand where it's headed, watch this video right here.